The lights inside the View studio were almost blinding, glowing off the sleek glass desk and bouncing off the faces of the hosts as the audience buzzed in anticipation. It was one of those mornings that felt electric before the cameras even started rolling. Everyone knew that today's guest, Stephen A. Smith, was not someone who held back. Whether you agreed with him or not, one thing was certain. He spoke his truth, unfiltered. Behind the scenes, producers whispered into their earpieces, making sure every camera was trained on the right angle. Joy Behar was flipping through her cue cards. Whoopi Goldberg was quietly sipping her tea, calm as always. Sarah Haynes and Alyssa Farah Griffin exchanged knowing glances. But Sunny Hostin? She was already focused. She had been waiting for this conversation. "All right, everyone," the stage manager called, holding up her fingers. "We're leaving 5, 4, 3. The familiar jingle of The View rolled and applause filled the studio. Joy smiled wide as she leaned forward. "Welcome back to The View. This morning we've got someone who never shies away from telling it like it is. ESPN's own Stephen A. Smith." The audience clapped and whooped as Stephen walked out from the side, dapper in a charcoal suit and polished shoes. He gave his signature grin, that mix of charisma and confidence that filled every space he entered. He shook hands with Joy and Whoopi before taking his seat. "Thank you for having me," Stephen said, flashing that familiar TV-ready smile. "I see I'm walking into enemy territory this morning." The audience laughed. Joy chuckled back. No, we love you here. We just brace ourselves." Sunny Hostin leaned forward, her expression polite but curious. "Stephen, you've been all over the news lately. Not just for sports commentary, but for your takes on class and privilege in America. You've said some people in Hollywood and in media are out of touch with everyday folks. What do you mean by that?" The air shifted just slightly. Stephen's smile didn't fade, but his posture changed. He sat up straighter, his tone dropping into that trademark mix of conviction and control. "Well, Sonny, I'll put it to you this way. Too many people with a platform, whether they're in politics, entertainment, or news, like to act as though they speak for the people, when in reality they barely speak to them." The audience murmured, already sensing the tension. Sunny smiled coolly, not missing a beat. "But wouldn't you say that having a platform requires a certain level of privilege? I mean, education, access, connections, these things help people get to a position where they can actually advocate for others." Stephen nodded. "Absolutely. But privilege doesn't automatically mean you understand people. It means you've got a responsibility to stay connected to the people. You can't claim to represent folks whose lives you can't even imagine anymore." Sunny's expression tightened just slightly. "So you're suggesting that anyone successful loses touch automatically?" "No," Stephen said, leaning in now, his voice steady. "I'm suggesting that some people forget what the climb felt like once they reach the top. They start talking down instead of talking to." The audience clapped softly, a mix of approval and discomfort rippling through the crowd. Sunny crossed one leg over the other, maintaining her composure. "I've never talked down to anyone, Stephen. I worked my way up. I came from the Bronx. I know struggle." "And I respect that," Stephen said immediately, his tone genuine. "You and I both know what it's like to come from nothing. But success changes how people see you, and sometimes how you see people. I'm not saying you forgot where you came from. I'm saying sometimes you talk like you're looking at people instead of standing beside them." That one landed hard. The camera caught Whoopi's raised eyebrows. Sarah shifted in her chair, looking between the two like a spectator at a tennis match. The crowd murmured again, more audibly this time. Sunny's lips curved into a smile, but it was the kind of smile that masked frustration. "So because I'm educated, because I speak differently now than I did growing up, that makes me elitist?" "Policy. I talk about systems. I don't shame anyone for their circumstance. That's not elitism. That's analysis." "Then let me ask you something," Stephen countered, leaning forward again, voice lowering. "When's the last time you actually talked to someone who doesn't agree with you? Not debated them, not corrected them, just..." Stephen continued, "You can't call yourself the voice of the people if you never leave the echo chamber. You sit here in New York on national television telling folks what they should think. But you ever ask them what they do think? The moment the cameras cut, the studio erupted into controlled chaos. Stagehands rushed in with clipboards. The floor manager called for a reset, and makeup artists moved toward the hosts, like silent storm clouds ready to patch up the wreckage. The audience buzzed, whispering in disbelief at what they'd just witnessed. Stephen A. Smith leaned back in his chair, loosening his tie slightly, his expression unreadable. Sunny Hostin was already conferring quietly with a producer, her tone low but clipped. Joy Behar exhaled sharply, fanning herself with a cue card. "Well," she said, half laughing, half nervous, "that's one way to get trending." Whoopi, who had stayed calm through the exchange, pushed back her chair and stood up. "Everybody take 5, she said, in that slow, deliberate way that left no room for argument. "Let's cool down before we turn this table into a boxing ring." The audience was ushered out for the break, still chattering. Some were clearly thrilled. They'd come for television and they'd just gotten something real. Others shook their heads, muttering about how uncomfortable it had felt. But no one had looked away. Stephen rose, straightening his jacket. He turned to Sunny, his expression not angry, just firm. "You handled that well?" he said, his tone calm but edged with sincerity. "Even if you don't like what I said." Sunny glanced up, her composure still impeccable. "I handle debate for a living," she replied, her smile tight. "What I don't appreciate is being told I look down on people." "That's not fair." Stephen tilted his head. "Fair or not, perception matters. People see what they feel. And today, a lot of folks are going to feel like they finally heard someone say what they've been thinking. Or they'll think you came here to grandstand," she shot back, standing now eye to eye with him. He gave a small smirk. "Maybe, but sometimes you've got to ruffle feathers to make people listen." Before she could reply, a producer stepped between them, smiling that diplomatic producer's smile. "All right, folks, let's take a breather. We'll reset in 5 minutes. Stephen, we've got a quick follow-up segment if you're still good." "Yeah, I'm good," Stephen said, brushing imaginary dust from his sleeve. "I always finish what I start." As Sunny walked off toward the dressing room hallway, Whoopi followed her quietly, her usual calm now carrying a hint of concern. Inside the hallway, Sunny exhaled and rubbed her temple, muttering under her breath. "Girl," Whoopi said softly, "you know what that was, right?" "That wasn't about you. That was about every person he's ever argued with. You just got the full Stephen A. experience." Sunny sighed, sitting on the edge of a couch. "I know, I just hate when someone takes what I say and twists it like I'm the villain. I work hard not to be that person." Whoopi nodded slowly. "You're not. But he's right about one thing. People feel things. Doesn't matter what you meant if what they felt was different. You'll get your turn to respond." Sunny looked up, her tone softening. "Yeah, I will. Just not today. Not on his terms." Meanwhile, out on the floor, Stephen was standing by the craft table, surrounded by a few crew members who clearly wanted to talk but were trying to play it cool. One young cameraman couldn't help himself. "Man, that was wild. I don't think anyone's ever gone toe-to-toe with Sunny like that." Stephen chuckled. "She's tough, smart. But sometimes folks in media forget the people they're supposed to speak for. My job's to remind them." The cameraman grinned. "You definitely reminded everyone. Twitter's already blowing up." Stephen raised a brow. "Already?" "Already," the guy said, showing him his phone. Sure enough, clips from the segment were everywhere. Stephen A. schools Sunny Hostin on elitism. The View explodes in heated debate. Whoopi tries to keep the peace. Stephen smirked again. "Told you people would feel it." Back in the control room, the producers were watching the playback, half in awe, half in panic. "We can't cut this," one said. "This is the moment. This is going viral." Another producer frowned. "We can't make Sunny look bad either. The comments are already dividing into camps." "Welcome to television," the first one muttered. When they came back from commercial, the energy in the studio was still thick, but the tone had shifted. The segment was lighter, something about Halloween costumes and celebrity pets. Everyone laughed a little too loudly, smiled a little too wide, pretending that nothing had happened. But under the surface, the earlier exchange hummed like a live wire. Aft being out of touch. She exhaled, placing the phone face down on the table. The reflection in the mirror looked back at her, calm, confident, but tired. Whoopi chuckled softly. "You'll be fine. You know who you are, and so does anyone who's been watching you for years." Sunny smiled faintly. "I guess it's just frustrating." He's not wrong about staying connected to the people. But I don't need to be lectured on empathy by someone who yells for a living. Whoopi grinned. "Then tell your story. Don't let him own the narrative. You've earned yes."